Okay, so this is draw.io, and we can use this either in the web browser or we can have a desktop chat also, a desktop version. What we're going to do here now, we're going to create a new diagram, and there's lots of templates we can use. Okay, this is used for engineering, this is used for flowcharts. What we want to do is we want to go to network, and we have lots of network templates to choose from here. Let's go ahead and pick this template here. We're going to create that. And then we have a series of Cisco graphics. Now these graphics are going to represent different devices. And we can organize these into a network diagram. Now there's a couple things you can do here. You have some shortcuts. If you hold Control and use the mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. If I just use the mouse wheel regularly, I'm going to scroll up and down, or mouse wheel from side to side, left and right. But I can zoom in and out here. If I click on any of these, so say I click on this router here, I can label this. I can choose all of the options for the font that I'm labeling it with. I can arrange it in front of different devices, behind different devices. Say I want this system here to be in front. I can click that to front, make that in front. Very similar, very intuitive controls if you're familiar with doing any graphic design or basic graphics. Pretty straightforward. Now, we also can create, and what we have here are different groups, or really just different shapes that represent groups. So we have group 2, 3, 4, and this is group 1, I imagine. We can change different styles. So let's go ahead and make this group 2. Let's make that green. Okay, we can change group 2 or group 3 here to like a pink. And group 4, we can change that to like maybe this nice blue color. And of course, you'd want to have, let's just give you the basic overview, and then I'm going to talk to you about how you would structure a network diagram like this. On your left side, you have all of your icons, and this is where you have your general shapes. Then you have these different icons here, these connecting lines, things like that. With Cisco, you have a whole icon set that you can pull from. And the great thing about this is you can create the diagram here, you can save it, you can share it with people. That's really helpful. So just some of the options here. We can make a copy of this, we can save this, and we can save this as an HTML file. We can save this as a PNG, download it if we want. We can save it to a Google Drive, OneDrive. We can download it to our computer. Lots of different options. Very helpful. There's different tooltips here. We can customize this as well. The menu bar at the top. Lots of stuff we can do. There's a lot of power you can include with this. A lot of functionality you can include with this program. That's really helpful. So the Cisco icon set's pretty helpful. You have all these different, and if you hover over these, you can see what these are: content switch module, virtual switch controller, desktop cluster controller. So we can see that here. We can also change the color itself. Okay, so if we want to change that color for whatever reason, we can change the color of the device. Maybe that's green. So we don't have to stick with this light blue. By default, they're all going to come to the light blue color, but we can do that if we want. We can make this orange if we want. We can put in a hex code here. So if I want to add a hex code, I can make that a certain blue. So that's very helpful. So if you're looking for a device here, you can use these Cisco icons. Now, in general, icons, when you're making a network diagram, are going to follow usually a standard. You know, you'll find devices like this. If we go down to routers here, we'll see our routers. And we see that router here, just a basic router shape. So it's important to understand what these icons mean. So if you're trying to figure out or trying to interpret a network diagram, this can be very helpful to do that. It's a great tool just to learn how to interpret a network diagram, not only make one. Because you can pull up a sample network diagram like this, and you can look at this and say, well, I don't know what any of this means. Well, here, you can look here. This, if you hover over this, that's a router. Okay. Here's a route switch processor. So where are we going to find that? Probably like server switches down here. Route switch processor. Yeah, I think this would probably layer 3 switch with a processor combined. We'll find that somewhere here. Content switch. We have a couple of those. Here's a content switch. I mean, this says route switch processor, so we'll leave it at that. Route switch processor. I'm just not seeing it here on the left side. It's got to be somewhere. Might be under routers. So I'm sure we can find if we keep looking. But you can find all these different devices and learn what they mean. Now, not every organization is going to use the same template. You know, some organizations are going to have their own idea of what certain devices should look like. In general, though, a lot of these are going to be very similar. And the Cisco devices are a good place to start just to learn this template or this framework for how this works. Usually if you see a symbol like this is some sort of storage controller. So let's take a look. Storage, you can see that, or some sort of server there. And we can find, I invite you just to explore and look throughout these modules on the left to figure out what you need. So I know that my head is probably covering a lot of this. So let me turn this off for a moment. So we can see on the left here all of these different options. Firewalls, network security devices, iOS firewalls, Sentry firewalls, router firewalls. So it's a great place to learn these different tools. Now let's go ahead and create or interpret this network. We'll interpret this network and then we're going to add a little bit to it. Okay, so we have our network here. What we're going to do is we're going to first off interpret this and explain this network a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit to this. Okay, so looks like right here we have, here's our internet facing group, right? So we have the internet coming in, we have a router here, and then we see this brick layout. Okay, so that's going to be a security device, most likely a firewall of some sort. So if we take a look on the left side, under security, we see iOS firewall. That matches this. So we have an iOS firewall. Now we already found our router there as our, or this is a content switch, I think. Let's see. We were just looking at that. Layer 3 switch, content switch. Yep. So you know it's a switch because of this symbol here. Okay, so this arrow with 3 arrows outside. That's usually a good indicator that something's a switch. So we know that's a switch, and we see that's a content switch. You also see this sun-looking system, and that's basically representing that this device is sending traffic to many other devices. So that's kind of universal. You could also see a switch as these 2 crossed arrows that make kind of an X. That's also a very common sign for a switch. And there's different variations of those that you might be able to see, or you might see on a network diagram. So if you see this, don't be confused. It's probably representative of a switch. Okay. So we have kind of like we have a router, our firewall. We should have a firewall, and then from there, we have a route switch processor. So this is a switch that is able to has a little more capabilities than just a standard switch. And since we're moving from one network to another network, there could be 2 different networks, we're going to have a router at the border. So this router will go to a local area network, and this router goes to a cloud. Now the local area, so the cloud server is connected to group 4. Group 4 is also connected to the LAN. Looks like each of these groups, No, group 3 and 4 are connected to the cloud and the LAN through their route switch processors here. And then in group 2 is only connected to the local area network. And then we have some file storage or file servers. Not sure what this device is, but we can find that on the left if we need to. And then we have additional subnets, all delineated probably by these route switch processors. So it's probably it's a pretty large network that we are seeing here. These could represent different departments, or they could represent different offices that we would have. So pretty big network here. Let's go ahead and try and create our own network diagram. So let's go ahead and create our own network diagram. Let's do new here. And let's go ahead and use another tool set or another group. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to keep with the Cisco since we've introduced those. But this example has multiple devices that you might not necessarily see. So let's take a look at these. And if I want to clear this out, I can just highlight any of these and just delete them if I want. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and delete those. Delete this. I'm going to use this as a blank slate. We'll keep that wide area network, and we'll keep a group here. We have our different servers here. These are usually representative of a server. So, and this could be like a generic server. Let me show you. If you take a look on the left side, you can see under servers, file server, which would be this right here. If we highlight that in orange, that's our file server, pink. We have server with a router, bunch of different generic servers, 2 file servers. It looks like this is probably a storage server, and that's delineated by those cylinders that we see there. So let's highlight our storage server. I don't want to change that, but I'm going to change the fill to this green, make that a little darker. Now, if we want to change the line color, we can also change the line color or the style itself. So we can make that. And if you ever mess up, the nice thing, you can do Control-Z. So that's something I'm a huge fan of because, I mean, it's nice if you make a mistake to undo it. Okay, so we have our management. We have our different servers here. We have the internet. Let's just let's start with a blank slate. I'm going to leave some of these on here just so I can draw from them. And then I'm going to kind of create a new environment. Let's see. So I'm going to create this little cloud thing. Okay. Now I could just write directly in there, internet. Now that's a little small, right? So let's bump that up. Bump up the font. Let's do 40. I think that's good. Let's make that a little larger. We can also make that blue. Let's make it like a lighter blue. Okay, that's the internet. And say anything coming to the internet is going to go into a DMZ. So we want to have that come into through a firewall. So let's go ahead and add a firewall there. And I'll just add a firewall icon. Okay. And this brick, like a brick wall, is usually indicative of a firewall. If you ever see a brick wall combined with something else, usually some sort of firewall. So we're going to have that. Now we can draw a line, bidirectional connector. We can connect that right to the internet and then right to the firewall. And if we want to connect that, we can up the size of that. So now it looks a little more robust there. And then let's say we connect that firewall is going to have probably our web server, or our DMZ is probably going to have our web server in there. So let's take a server, put that in there. Change that color. And then we're going to have another firewall on the other end. Instead of creating a new firewall and resizing it, what I can do is I can just highlight this, Control D, duplicate that firewall, and I could set that up there. So that's really helpful. If I want to add, say I want to label this as a DMZ, I can do that using this heading box. So you can just add this, very similar if you're using like PowerPoint or Word or InDesign or anything. If you're familiar with those programs, this can be pretty intuitive to you. And it's designed to be easy to use. So it's designed for these technical documents. I know a lot of my students have had to make network diagrams on PowerPoint, which is a pain. That's really complicated. I mean, it's not designed for that. With this, you can expand the diagram. You can add to it much easier. It's way easier to use it in draw.io. So, and then we'll have, leaving there, we're going to have some sort of router. So let's add a router 2. I'll just use the regular router icon. We'll put that here. And then we can have arrows. Again, I'm just going to duplicate this, connect it to each of these devices. And each device, if you notice when I connect it, it's going to have multiple connection points. And it's dependent on the shape. So you see how the router has kind of a rounded connection point. So if I zoom in here, you'll see what I'm talking about. I just connected it accidentally to the group there. But I can change that. If I grab this, you'll see these little X's that appear? This is going to be determined by the shape itself. So I can connect it to multiple points on that firewall. I'll connect it to the top point so it's straight, but I could connect it to lots of different points on there. So it looks like it's naturally connected to the shape itself, which is very nice. Okay, we'll do that. And then what we can do, it'll automatically line up. So it'll make that straight. Then we got a little DMZ there. I'll add a little arrow here to the file server. Just make it a directional arrow from here. And then we'll connect that to the center here. And then I'll up the font size there to 12. What do we have here? 5. Okay, that's 5. Okay, so I got a little DMZ going to the internet, and then we can set this up to go from there all the way over to here. Let's use a curved line here. Or not a curve, I just use a right angle, just a straight arrow, but I put a little bend in it. And then we have just a little network there. Let me delete the extra stuff over to the right. But you can see how easy it is to duplicate, or create your own network diagram with this draw.io program. It's very helpful, it's very intuitive, and it's a great way to learn network diagrams and how to create them. Network diagrams are very helpful to keep track of your devices, to visualize your network, and they help prevent losing track of your devices. So especially in a virtualized network, it's very helpful to have a network diagram. Oftentimes you'll find VM sprawl or network device sprawl where you have devices that are no longer patched or you've lost track of them. They're on your network somewhere. They can pose a security risk. With VM sprawl, you have multiple VMs that are either running in the background or provisioned, ready to be run. They could be holding up resources, holding up storage space. So it's very helpful to visualize this so you keep track of all of those devices, especially if there's personnel changes or there's lots of people working on these devices on a daily basis. it's important for everybody to be on the same page and to keep a network diagram up to date. The nice thing about draw.io, you can have multiple people working on the same diagram too, so you can share it with multiple people, and then you have people, everybody from a team working on this and viewing this together. So I hope this is a good, helpful overview for this program, the draw.io program. I think it's very good, especially if you're new to network diagrams and you're looking for something easy to get started with.